And you're welcome back. President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has terminated the appointment of Yaw Kwakwa, the managing director of the Ghana Airports Company Limited. In a letter dated February 4, 2022, the company's board chair, the Transport Ministry, said, per a letter dated January 31, 2022, that the president has directed the sacking of Mr. Kwakwa. Now, Kweku Ofori-Esiama, who is the minister, added in this regard that there must be necessary steps that should be taken to give effect to this directive. And excerpts of the letter indicate that I count on your cooperation of this letter by the MD, Yaw Kwakwa, who was on a tour with the Roads and Transport Committee, says he is unaware of this directive from the Transport Ministry.
Not cited any such letter. He is not aware. So, and this is not the medium through which, even if there is such a letter, he will be communicated with. Let's leave that for now.
But your boss signed the letter. Have you cited it yourself?
Let's deal with this matter at a later time. For now, it's the visit of the Parliamentary Select Committee to see whether this place is fit enough for the purpose for which McDonald has applied for.
But can you confirm whether you've seen or not?
You are aware of the letter.
I would not speak to any matter of this kind of situation for now.
Okay. You've told us that yes, you've been very satisfied with the work that McDonald has done, at least physical structures wise, and then the installation of things. We're just getting to know that your appointment as managing director has been terminated by the Minister of Transport. Your reaction to this?
Does this come to your attention, first of all?
I don't know what you're talking about. My appointment has not been terminated, so if you have a fresh letter, please give it to me.
Let's get the latest for you on this matter. Joining us now is Kwesi Parker-Wilson, our parliamentary correspondent. Parker, what's the latest on this? There are confusions over whether or not the dismissal is effective. What more can you tell us about this?
Blessed, that's correct. There seems to be some confusion over the dismissal of the managing director of Ghana Airport Company Limited, Mr. Yaw Kwakwa. Now, earlier when we communicated to him about his dismissal, he was very shocked. He expressed disappointment. He was struggling to even get the words to put together to explain to us that he had no knowledge of his disappointment. Shortly after that, there was a media report about the transport minister himself, who signed a report indicating that he hasn't signed any report, he's not seen any letter about the dismissal. Now we are learning from his deputy minister, Hassan Tampoli, confirming to the parliamentary press corps that indeed Mr. Yaw Kwakwa has been dismissed by the president. In fact, he says that the media took his boss out of context. His boss never denied knowledge of the dismissal of Mr. Yaw Kwakwa, but rather sought to suggest that they send him a copy of the dismissal letter. And that cannot be constituted, or that cannot mean that indeed he denied that Mr. Kwakwa has been disappointed. But he has confirmed to us that today that Mr. Yaw Kwakwa has been dismissed. We asked him whether his dismissal has to do with the confusion around the private or the McDonald aviation. He says it's just rumor mongering and that the president has the right to appoint and equally dismiss any individual in his government. And so we cannot assume that the dismissal of Mr. Yaw Kwakwa is largely premised on the controversies surrounding the operations of the McDonald aviation. Murtala Mohammed is here. He's Ibrahim Mohammed is a member of Parliament, and he joins me briefly to get a quick understanding on the controversies and then the confusion around the dismissal of Mr. Yaw Kwakwa. Honorable, thank you very much. What do you make of all the confusion that we are learning? One, he wasn't dismissed. The man says he didn't know. Now his deputy saying that the man has been dismissed. What do you make of the dismissal of Mr. Yaw Kwakwa?
I think that the controversies epitomizes the mess in which we are as a country. You have a minister of state who says that the man has not been dismissed. I haven't signed any dismissal letter. If there was any letter that ought to have been signed, the right person to sign that letter would have been the minister, because the Ghana Airport Company falls directly under the supervision of the Ministry of Transport. Yet he said they didn't. and you have his deputy minister who comes to say that he's been dismissed and that his boss was taken out of context. You interviewed him, and you know very well what he said. He made categorical and conclusive statement that the man has not been dismissed. He hasn't dismissed the man, yet his deputy comes to say that, no, my boss was taken out of context. This president is fighting anybody who is fighting corruption.
What do you mean by this president is fighting anybody fighting corruption?
Look, the dismissal has to do with the illegality McDan was engaged in.
No, you cannot say for a fact that McDan was engaged in illegality. Honorable,
I'm saying that the Ghana Airport Company, in a statement issued, described his action as illegal. They described it as illegal. So if I say the illegality he was engaged in, it is absolutely right.
But today there has been a new development. Kwakwa himself says McDan today has satisfied with all the requirements. And if you look at the physical installation at his private terminal, the Terminal 1, everything is put in check.
What informed the statement they issued? Didn't they know that he satisfied the requirement? And why must it take them this number of days to be telling us this cock and bull story? I mean, they think that this government and its appointees think that the people of this country are a bunch of idiots. We are not. The president is fighting anybody who is fighting corruption. And it is very clear that there is a tough war between McDan on one hand and Gabi Ochirdaku and Assin North on the other. Find out who are those managing the VIP launch at Terminal 3. So they consider his action as an action that is competing with what they have been engaged in. And I'm saying that that airport was built by somebody. Look, to be very honest with you, I don't know where we are heading as a country. I don't know what is happening. I have no problem if the president decides to appoint and disappoint. The president has the right and the authority to appoint someone today and the next day disappoint that person. He has the right. But we are looking at the time and we are looking at the circumstances surrounding this. More so, when we have a deputy minister and his deputy singing different songs, I think that it supports the view that the gentleman's dismissal has to do with the tough war that we are experiencing at the
That is your conviction?
Well, it is not my conviction. That is the facts. If there is anything contrary to what I'm saying, say it. Isn't the timing so worrying to you?
No, but one will say that the president has the right, the prerogative to appoint and dismiss. So, assuming, as you are alleging, that it has anything to do with the controversies around McDan aviation, the president has the right to dismiss Mr. Yakoka if he so desires.
That argument should not even arise. Who doesn't know that it is the president who appoints and disappoints? Who doesn't? We know. But we are raising questions about the timing. If the president, if the reasons for which this man is being dismissed, I don't think that those reasons happen just today.
But there is no reason attached to the letter that we saw.
No, I'm saying exactly that is the more reason why they won't tell us. Because if they begin to, when you begin to ask the reasons, the same people who are telling you that the president has the right to appoint and disappoint will tell you that nothing forces the president to give reasons. That they will tell you the president is not under any obligation to give reasons why he appoints and disappoints. Part of transparent and accountable governance under the prevailing circumstances, surrounding the tough war between McDan and the family of the president, it would have been appropriate they tell us, this is the reason why we are dismissing this gentleman. You yourself, you've indicated that he expressed shock about his dismissal. He expressed shock. They should tell us, they should give us reasons. We are practicing democracy, not autocracy. And therefore, the people of this country, the people whose taxes ensure the comfort and the safety of our president and his appointees ought to be told. Look, if the president decided or decides to appoint the deputy minister for example, foreign affairs, I don't think that anybody would want to ask questions because there isn't any known controversy within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But there is something happening, and which indeed attracted the attention of everybody between a business friend of the president and also a family of the president. So when you disappoint the person, at least you should tell us why you are disappointing him. You should tell us. And to be very honest, my worry is not this. My worry is the robbery that goes on at the airport. My worry is the Frontier Health, the millions of dollars they are making at the airport. And I have been talking about this. Nobody seems to care. Millions of dollars every month. Millions of dollars.
I know there's a private member's motion before the House.
We have made such demands. We have made such demands. Millions of dollars have been made. Frontier Health. The company is owned by Asante Bediotu's wife and the husband to one of the daughters.
Well, we cannot confirm. We cannot confirm.
Look, tell me who.
These allegations that we are talking
tell
about.
Me who owns it.
But I know that is a private member's motion before the House. The House will delve into that.
Tell me,
don't
you think that we need to know?
That is why a member of Parliament.
More so, hold on. More so when you had the Minister for Health, when he appeared before appointment committee, said that they operated initially without a license. Right. Look, my worry, and everybody should be of concern to this. You have that company, they decide to open an offshore account, the monies are sent there. Could you imagine the monies that are collected every month? Those monies were to be in Ghana. It would have helped to shore up the value of our domestic currency. These monies are sent somewhere under the guise of a private person. Go and find out those who are administering the test there. They are Noguchi employees.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time. But I know that, as I said, there's a private member's motion bill on this frontier healthcare services and the COVID expenditure that the minority caucus are pushing for. So soon they will consider a bipartisan committee to investigate that. So, as I said, I mean, these allegations, we cannot confirm that. But, Blessed, the fact is that the minority is alleging that the dismissal of Mr. Yakwakwa, MD of Ghana Airport Company Limited, has a link or has a nexus with the controversies and the confusion surrounding the operation of McDonough Aviation. Well, this evening, we are still following and tracking to understand why the man was dismissed, but the minority is demanding answers. They think the timing is problematic and that but for the confusion around the McDonough Aviation, the Mr. Yakwakwa wouldn't have been dismissed.
There are questions even about the letter written to the chief executive of the Ghana Airport Company. Questions about who it is exactly that is dismissing this gentleman. Did you get any clarity from the Deputy Minister?
Well, the Deputy Minister in his mind was clear that it was the Minister who signed it. So it's the authority. The Minister has the authority to do that. And so that letter that we saw is at the behest of the Minister responsible for transport. And so there's no ambiguity about who is instructing the MD for Ghana Airport Company Limited to leave office. It is the Minister who has the right to do so. And indeed, he is the one who did that.
My colleague Parker Wilson there giving us the latest. Now, the minority in Parliament is yet again accusing government of engaging in an elaborate plot geared at unseating its Member of Parliament for Assin North, James Jachi Kwesi. And Accra High Court today issued a criminal summons against the MP after he failed to show up in court. He is a subject of series of actions geared at stopping him from performing parliamentary duties. Now, he has been fighting in court since July 2021 when his elections as an MP was set aside by the Cape Coast High Court. The state says he's engaged in forgery and perjury, the basis of the summons that the court has issued. Court correspondent Joseph Akable has the rest of the story.
Director of Public Prosecution Yvonne Atakro-Bobisa informed the court that officials had been sent to the MP's residence here in Accra and also at the constituency, Assin North, but they have not been successful at giving the MP the court documents. She indicated that copies were posted at the residence, yet the MP had failed to show up in court once again. The court said instead of issuing the warrant of arrest as had been requested by the Director of Public Prosecution, it was rather giving an order that a criminal summons be posted at the residence of the MP here in Accra. Our sources within the AG's department say should the MP fail to show up in court on the 15th of February 2022, the request for an arrest warrant to be issued will be made once again. Richard Techimensa, who is the complainant in this particular matter, says the MP must show up in court.
I'm surprised that someone who wants to be a member of parliament to enact laws for us to obey and abide by is embarked on such a wanton disregard for the laws of the land and showing such disrespect to the courts. You've been following the civil one, and he has not been coming to court. Even a case that he himself has put before the court, his own application at the Supreme Court, he was not there. And this one, we were here last week. We were told that they made attempt to serve him. They even informed his lawyer, then sent him a text message. He did not turn up. Today, too, attempts were made to serve him. They went to the house and met someone at the house. The person refused to receive the sermon, and it was pasted on his wall. But today, he did not turn up. So the court has directed that he should be served through criminal summons, which will be pasted on his wall. Let's hope that next week, 15, when we come to court, he will be here.
So the case continues on February 15, 2022. For JoyNews from the Law Court Complex, my name is Joseph Akable.
Well, let's get some legal perspectives on this matter. Joining me now is lawyer Joseph Diop Penka. He's also a former Deputy Attorney General. He has some concerns on this raging matter. Thank you so much for joining us on the pulse here. First of all, what's the implication of the criminal summons, by the way?
Well, thanks very much. Thanks to your cherished and many listeners out there, and thanks for having me on air this afternoon. Let me say that the drama unfolding is a test of our legal jurisprudence's development as far as our nation is concerned. I call it drama unfolding because it is becoming one too many incidents in the way we try to manage our legal affairs in this country as far as the specific case of the Assin North MP is concerned. I am frightened by the development because we cannot, should not, and dare not attempt to subvert justice on any day, whoever you are, because of the supremacy of our Constitution in all cases and the principle that we are all equal before the law. So if you make any effort or attempt to subvert justice, that in itself is a criminal offense that you can answer for. So the criminal summons that the Attorney General or the criminal process the Attorney General is initiating is simply an invocation in compliance with Article 88, the mandate of the Attorney General. Therefore, I think that the best thing to do in the circumstances of this matter is for the honorable member to avail himself for trial or for the civil processes so that they can come to an effective conclusion. If it is in the criminal trial and he's innocent, he'll be acquitted and discharged. If it is in the civil case and he proves his case, he indeed will be declared to be the victor in the circumstances of the matter.
You seem to be very much confident and hold the same view with the court when they say that there's a need for some criminal summons, but there are questions about the political issues surrounding this very MP, concerns about what the minority is describing as an intent by government to use the office of the Attorney General to persecute and not necessarily prosecute defaulters. What do you have to say to that?
I will give a response in law and also make a reference for you to understand what I'm talking about. First of all, the reference I want to make is that under the government of the NDC, the Boku Central MP was tried and convicted. What was that? It was initiated by the Attorney General. He was tried and convicted and sentenced to a number of years in prison. That is correct. That one was not persecution. It was justice. But because the present person is NDC, that is persecution. I mean, how can you double speak? You cannot approbate and reprobate. You see, so I would like to say that we should look at it from an objective point of view and look at the laws of the land, whether or not we are complying with the laws of the land. The fundamental question is, there are 137 NDC MPs. Why is it James J.T. question that the Attorney General is taken to court and not the other 136? That's the fundamental question you should be asking yourself. It means that he has something to answer. And I've already told you that we have what we call stare decisis. That is, our legal jurisprudence is guided by decisions of the court in the past. There are decisions of the court as far as matters like this are concerned, and they have been decisively dealt with. He's now before a civil court, and there's also criminal summons as well. So he's supposed to appear. But this issue of evading service, non-appearance, inability to avail himself in court, and etc., is only prolonging justice. But for how long? Because if he avails himself, if he thinks that he hasn't infringed any laws, he should avail himself to the court processes. And then his innocence will be established.
Where we seem to be having some difficulty now is the nature and the office that this gentleman occupies. At least the court has stripped him all of these titles. But the challenge now is about the separation of powers and the fact that the Parliament and its dealings is often referred to as the black box, an area where the courts cannot exercise complete jurisdiction. Given this challenge that we face now, how do you feel that the courts would have to approach this going forward?
My brother, we are not running a watertight separation of power system in Ghana. If you read the Constitution carefully, when you look at the functions of the executive, you look at that of the legislature, and look at that of the judiciary. Each of them has a distinct function. And if you read Article 125 onwards, and then you look critically at the functions of the judiciary and all that, one of the functions is to make pronouncement on actions of the legislature and the executive and declare them unconstitutional to the extent that they are not in compliance with the law of the state. So if that's the adjudicating body by the Constitution to carry out this, and we say we are all equal before the law, and a person is alleged to have committed an offense and is a member of the legislature is brought before the judiciary, he's supposed to appear and answer. Otherwise, the principle of equality before the law is sentenced to death. So we need to understand the concept of separation of powers in the light of our constitutional principles and injunctions. Because no particular state entity has absolute power to exercise. And this immunity we are talking about by parliamentarians is not an absolute one. Otherwise, if we interpret it to be absolute, we will run into absurdity. Because, for example, if an MP on his way to Parliament picks up a gun and shoots dead a person and is brandishing same and moving towards Parliament, should we allow him to go to Parliament? Because the law says that when he's on his way to or from or attending at, he should not disturb his processes of court. We should not interpret the law into absurd situations. We must interpret it in the light of the modern purposive approach to interpretation, which is that we should apply purpose to arrive at reason and look at the spirit and letter of the Constitution, the two, to be able to arrive at any decision. So to talk about the principle of separation of powers, today, if a judge commits an offense, that judge is subject to the laws of Ghana and will be tried by our courts, even though the person is a judge. So to say that the concept of separation of powers means that if an MP commits an offense, it should not be tried by the court because the executive is separate from the legislature and the legislature is separate from the judiciary, will mean a very absurd situation that we will arrive at and will make nonsense of the constitutional dictates and principles we have imbibed for ourselves since 1992.
I see how passionate you are about the law, but then there are concerns about what then happens in Parliament. What do you see as the likely implication for the MP for this area going ahead to cast a vote if indeed that comes up on the E-levy? Are there some legal ramifications for him if he goes ahead, shows up in the Chamber of Parliament to vote on the day probably Parliament is considering some other matters?
You see, when the process is served on you and you take an act that will prejudice the process that has been served on you, you can be summoned for contempt. But the point now that we are told is that the service has not been effected because even his own motions that is filed in court, he did not appear to move those motions. And it's obvious that when he appears to move the motions, he will be served with the court processes. So he himself hasn't even appeared in court. So you go to court seeking justice, and you file your process seeking justice, and when on the day of you moving the motion, you don't appear in court, you expect to have justice, you cannot have it. So I think that the circumstances of this matter are such that I would advise the honorable person, and I think that whoever is his lawyer, to do him a very good service, to allow him go through the legal processes. At the end of the day, if he is innocent, he will be acquitted and discharged. If he is found guilty, he will suffer the penalty for it. But to continue to evade service and to continue not to avail yourself to face justice will mean that you have something to hide. If you have nothing to hide, appear before their lordships, put your case forcefully, and their lordships are guided by law to arrive at a decision.
I'm sorry, but it appears you are acting naive. You're not just a former Deputy Attorney General, but you're also a former Member of Parliament. There are concerns about the numbers, so the politics of it. Why are you not mindful of that as well? Don't you feel that there's any role to be played at this point, possibly an intervention from the leadership of the House to avail to make the MP available, given the deadlock that we have?
But even what is surprising, my brother, is that when he arrives in court, will the decision be taken that very day? It's unlikely that you will go to court and that very day all the motions will be decided by the court. They will definitely adjourn. So this point of talking about this numbers game and etc. So if for example, NPP were having 200 MPs and NDC has 75, and then an NDC member of Parliament commits an offence and is being arrested, that nobody will have a problem. Is that what we are saying? But because the numbers are tight, therefore if somebody is alleged to have committed an offence, he should be left to go, because if he's taken out, then one party will suffer a disadvantage. If you suffer a disadvantage as a result of law, then that is it, because that's what our constitution so says. But if you are going to say that, look, the numbers are tight, so the person should not be made to answer, because if he's made to answer, it will reduce their strength and they will not be able to do what they want to do. That would be most unfortunate. Because it's like also saying that, flipping the coin, if an MPP member of Parliament commits an offence today, he's supposed to also go through the same process. Can you say that because he's MPP, he should not be made to go through the process? Anyway. And you see, as I've already indicated, we have the legal jurisprudence to guide us that in this country, we have convicted and jailed a certain MP before. And that was under the regime of the current minority. They saw nothing wrong with it. Today, there's a process to try one, and then they see everything wrong with it.
I see.
You cannot double speak.
Well, let's see what then happens in the future. Joseph Dindiok Pemka, I'm grateful so much for your time this afternoon on The Pulse. Now, the Ghana National Fire Service is worried about what they describe as public intrusion and obstruction during emergencies. The service says the invasion of its work and space affects the psychological performance of firefighters, as they most often waste precious time confronting the crowd instead of dousing the flames. On your screens now is a copy of a statement released by the Ghana National Fire Service, and you see excerpts of it there. Probably let me just read excerpts of it to you right now. The Ghana National Fire Service wishes to express its worry over public intrusion and obstruction during emergencies. Now, the statement continues to say that officers and men attending to emergency situations, including fires, accidents, explosions, etc., should be given the needed space to operate and deliver the best results. During accidents, there is often spillage of fuel and other dangerous combustible substances. These could, of course, threaten life, and of course, the Ghana National Fire Service is worried about that, indicating that those chemicals could lead to explosion. Now, point 3 of the statement indicates that heckling and invasion of workspaces and then the workspace of fire officers during the performance of their mandate affects their psychological performance and decision making. It goes on to say that these also tend to waste the precious time needed for firefighting and rescue operations, since the officers have to manage crowd control. And that's the concern of the Ghana National Fire Service. They go on to say that we entreat all well-meaning Ghanaians to help educate the general public to desist from always running into emergency scenes, as this has the potential to result to mass casualties. We will want to remind the general public not to hesitate to call on us for emergency on our emergency lines. That's 192 and 112 immediately they encounter fires, accidents and related emergencies. We encourage the public to adhere to the best safety practices as the Ghana National Fire Service is indicating in their statement there. Meanwhile, the Director of Public Relations at the service, ACFO1, Timothy Osafo Afum, says he'll be, of course, joining us to have some conversations on this. But we first of all bring you a report by Love FM's Mona Lisa Frimpong, and thereafter we could have a conversation on this.
Buildings located next to the Ajakum building in Edum serves as a hub for wholesale and retail of provisions and general goods. The fire started around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Eyewitnesses claim a power outage which occurred around that time sparked the fire. Before the arrival of the Ghana National Fire Service, some shop owners and passerbys tried using their own means to douse the flames.
Lights no call off no. Any bear 5 minutes almost so and yet 5 to 10 minutes. And who say we say free Abronsano so eba. It's there you started say JB that's near Russia say call. The rain inside on near lockdown no. And amount from fire extinguisher yes almost the good a genuine. I'm try ya name to me who say I myself because I house your wholesale and Crawford to ammonia and one tomato stands from there wholesale. It's an animal in the major near day a chic
JK Bempe, a victim of the incident, spoke to JoyNews.
We didn't pick anything. Everything is banned.
Though no casualties were recorded, the destruction to large numbers of wares was visible. Deputy Regional Fire Commander Rashid Nisau advises individuals to be extra cautious as we are in the Harmattan season.
We have managed to contain the fire. Major problem that we are experiencing at the moment is the poor housekeeping. Exactly pure because we realize that the way they heap things, it has gone as up to what? The ceiling. So when you drop water, it's difficult for the water to penetrate. So it is poor housekeeping that has delayed a little, but we have managed to put the fire under control. And of course, the public are giving us a tough time to have access to firefighting. And you have seen we calling in the police to come and assist with controlling the crowd here. So everything is still under investigation as I speak to you. During fire investigations, the owners will be contacted. If the owners are contacted, they will come and they will give us the estimated cost of what? Damage. It will be part of our investigations to be able to assess, to ascertain whether the building is still habitable or not.
Well, let's now speak to Timothy Osanfo Afum, who's the Director of Public Relations at the Ghana National Fire Service. He's joining us via Zoom. First of all, let's understand what you mean by public intrusion and obstruction during emergencies. It appears that we're having some challenges, but if you could hear me say, I was asking by I was asking for more clarity on what you mean by public intrusion. If you could just provide some more clarity on that in the statement that you released.
Well, thank you very much. You realize that elsewhere, when emergencies occur, you see people moving away from the incident scene. But here in our country, when incidents occur, you rather see people trooping in, sometimes to the extent that they try to take, when it is firefighting, they try to take hoses from the firefighters, which does not go well with our activities. If it is accident, you see them trying to carry the patients. And that is why we are saying that they should give us space and enough room to operate. Because, for instance, if it is an accident and you don't take time and you hurt the spine of the victim, that is forever, you have rendered the person incapable of walking again. That is why we are asking that in instances of emergencies and we arrive, they should give us the room to operate.
It appears that you are concerned about the public. The public is also concerned about you because there are already concerns that the fire service most often do not arrive on time at the fire scene, and that's resulting into the intrusion that you're complaining about. How about such cases?
Right. Arrival at incident scenes does not solely depend on the fire service. Arrival depends on the time the call is made to us. Most often, people try their hands on the situation, and if they fail, before they get in touch with us. In such circumstances, you may think that
once an incident occurred, the fire service should be able to know that an incident has occurred. No, we need to be informed before we're able to know that there is an incident and we need to get to the scene to give the needed help. So it is not about the fire service delaying, but it is about the time that the victims or whoever is around call, and the call is placed to the fire service. Once we receive the call, we set off. Now, there is also the situation where outside of the main cities, like in the districts, you have just one fire station in a district. So in such circumstances, depending on where the incident occurs, it may seem as if we have delayed, but it is not our fault.
Is that to suggest that you are always prompt on the scenes?
Yes, for us, we are always prompt. For example, I have what we call the radio set. This radio set is what we use for communication. And anytime a call is placed, the control room announces to the nearest station to proceed. And from my monitoring, we are always on time and prompt.
If you have any final caution for the public, you have the opportunity now, sir.
Yes. My caution to the public is that we should take a cue from what happened at Apiache and always get away from emergency scenes. Simply because if it is a building structure, we have the techniques and the know-how to know when a building is about to collapse. You who has trooped in there, you don't know. And therefore, if there is any building collapse, it may affect you. Also, in an emergency scene, there could be an explosion or a sudden fire outbreak. And so if it is an accident, please give us space and let us work so that if some of these incidents do occur, it does not affect the public.
I'm grateful, ACFO Timothy, for your time here on The Pulse. We return after this short break. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us on The Pulse. Now, the New Patriotic Party is taking a swipe at critics of President Akufo-Addo's handling of the Ghanaian economy. Now, according to the party, Ghana would have been growing at a better rate but for COVID-19. Citing the 2022 World Economic Outlook reports, the governing New Patriotic Party argues that the recent challenges confronting the economy stem from the global pandemic. Former President John Dramani Mahama is among scores of citizens who have questioned government's insistence to pass the electronic transactions levy. However, responding to these claims, Director of Communications for the New Patriotic Party, Yao Babing Asamoah, accused the NDC of placing partisan interest over national agenda. He insists that the economic policies of the New Patriotic Party is safe and sound.
We have moved beyond knocking good policies down for political sabotage, even though the NDC has been very good at that. If you recall, in the 7th Parliament, there were blatant attempts to sink the fortunes of the country. The fortunes they left in tatters when we took over in 2017. When the government issued a $2.3 billion bond in April 2017, as part of urgent steps to reprofile the threatening debt bequeathed to Ghana by the Mahama-led NDC government, the NDC minority in Parliament wrote to the Securities and Exchange Commission of the United States of America seeking to stop the bond issue. They wrote to America to stop the bond issue when we were using to reprofile our debt and stabilize the economy. Again, in August 2018, the NDC wrote to the IMF and the World Bank to try and stop the novel Sino-Hydro bauxite barter agreement brokered by His Excellency, the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. The Sino-Hydro agreement, which was going to fund much needed infrastructure, as well as help us complete the loop in the bauxite train, that is refined bauxite in Ghana, and localize the full benefits of bauxite mining, create new jobs and skills, and position Ghana as a major player in the forest market through export of aluminium-related products, was kicked against by the NDC. The minority leader, who was very vociferous in that process, has been fitted in his constituency with the first ever interchange, Tamale Central, due for completion soon. Again, the NDC failed miserably when they wrote to the IMF and the World Bank in May 2020 to stop the MPP government from accessing 1 billion in COVID-19 related funds, citing misreporting of figures, a grievous offense that no country should wish for itself, though President Kufuor had to pay a fine for the NDC having done exactly that before. So where are we with the conversation about the E-levy? That is where we believe civil society, academia, concerned Ghanaians, especially the media, should take their time and analyze the conditions dispassionately, very dispassionately. Look at it against the backdrop of the international COVID economy, where everything has become scarce. Capital is scarce, production is down, supply chain disruptions, and the concomitant rise in prices of everything, including container shipping.
Well, Yao Babing Asamoah is joining us, fortunately, on phone this afternoon. Welcome to the program, sir. You claim that the economy of Ghana is safe and sound. How do we juxtapose that to the ratings that we're seeing all over the place, downgrading Ghana's creditability and also indicating how we are increasingly becoming debt distressed? How do you respond to all of these assessments?
Thank you very much. The basis of my position that the economy is sound is taken from the rating agencies themselves. If you notice, all the reports, the reports claim that pre-pandemic we're doing very well. And it's because the economy was resilient that we managed to be very proactive in the pandemic and to save lives and protect the economy, all on the strength of the economy. And we didn't depreciate that much. We didn't go into the negatives. We got in at 0.4 during COVID. And then we're one of the fastest rebounding after COVID. So the issue here is worry about the public debt, which they say if we pass adequate revenue measures, we are likely to be able to overcome. So it's on the basis of what the rating agencies themselves have pointed out.
If you're claiming that you're basing all of your arguments on even the World Economic Outlook itself, there are predictions that Ghana's economy looks gloomy. So how then do we believe what you're telling us, particularly when this is stated in the same document you are laying claims to?
Yes, how do we choose which side to believe? Those who are predicting gloom and doom. That's why I'm saying that we all have to sit back, look at how we are performing, and determine whether or not we are a viable nation. And in that sense, begin to look inward, which is the basis of the E-levy, that we can't continuously look for salvation beyond our shores. Because as the World Economic Outlook points out, we are not out of the woods yet. We are still in danger from COVID worldwide. And it would mean that there's going to be inflation, interest rates are rising, there are no more monies that were flowing around with negative interest rates before. Now everything is on the up side. And it means loans will be more expensive. Commercial loans will be expensive. Even private bilateral loans and multilateral loans are going to be hard to come by. And so this is the point where you look inward. Because even if you were, assuming you were to join an IMF program for short-term budget bailout, you would be compelled to look for the revenue streams from inside. So if you can do that yourself, then there's no point in getting involved with the IMF when you can have an Article 4 consultative relationship with them and get going from inside. So the basis of the E-levy is not to rescue the economy entirely by itself, but to input and make that difference. You know, that takes us beyond the norm where we get into a point where revenues have always been tight.
I'm sorry,
But
just to see
this
clarity
day-
on the homegrown solutions you're referring to. During your press conference today, you claim that you're very much aware of the hardship that Ghanaians are going through. And then you continue to point out how many persons have lost their
your
jobs
voice is very low.
due to the
very much aware of-
COVID-19 pandemic. So the point is, if you are claiming that many people have lost their jobs and they are finding it difficult to even feed themselves, why then go ahead to impose more tax measures?
It's not an imposition that is beyond the capacity of Ghanaians. This is a new economy.
You mean Ghanaians can afford? You mean Ghanaians can afford to pay the 1.7% tax?
Please. It's a Ghanaian conversation we are having.
Precisely.
And I'm also speaking, so you can't insist on making up your own. Ask me a question and let me respond. You can't make your own deduction. Or what I'm going to say.
No, but you just told me, Mr. Babinga Samoa, you just told me that Ghanaians can afford to pay the E-levy. That's what you just told me.
Where we are now, you have an economy worth 1 trillion cedis on the internet, a brand new economy on the internet, 1 trillion cedis, a Ghanaian economy. And if we have a Ghanaian conversation about that Ghanaian economy, we could tax it and help use it to reform the financial system. That's what we're saying. So it's about engaging as Ghanaians, talking together, and determining that salvation doesn't lie beyond our shores in terms of somebody giving us a hand up. Because the hands up are difficult everywhere. Where you're going for a hand up, they're also looking for a hand up. Because COVID has ravaged the international economy. That is why we're talking about the World Economic Outlook and its prognosis that with the new variants of Omicron, you are still going to get supply disruptions, you are going to get demand disruptions, you are going to see increasing prices, you are going to see skittish capital markets, and in all of that, it means rising public debt because you are still fighting COVID. So given that set of circumstances, you will need to look inward. You will need to brace yourself and go on a nationalist journey. That nationalist journey is what we are saying is the E-levy.
But is it not questionable itself how you're painting the picture of some distaste for foreign aid, particularly when the very first strategy of the economic management team during the pandemic was to go for a rapid credit facility from the IMF. You went in for that funding. So why not go for it again?
Now, if you want to go there in the current economy, you go with conditionality. It didn't come with conditionality. We were successful enough based on the strength of our economy at that time. They accepted that they could give us that facility without conditionality. What we are saying is that for the progress we've made, if you go for conditionality, you set yourself back several years. Because you can have different types of relationships with the multilateral agencies. You can have that relationship where they've lent you the money without conditionalities, use it as you see fit. And you can have that relationship where they say, don't pay for this, don't pay for that. Use all your money to pay off your bills and take the money from indoors. Don't take it from anywhere else. Whichever way you find the money, find it through taxation. That is where the issue is.
How do you respond to claims that the austerity measures will bring some level of discipline into the NPP administration? You've been accused by the National Democratic Congress of wasteful expenditure. That's why many believe this is the time to go to the IMF, at least for some level of policy direction. What's your take on that?
The IMF policies are clear and can be implemented internally without having to put yourself in a frame for conditionality. The government has already stated clearly that it is going to cut down 20% of its programmed expenditure. That is a major move that deals with the expense side. There's also talk of waste and managing waste. And of course, again, the government has programs in place, revenue accountability, compliance enforcement. For example, in GRA, it's working very hard to look at leakages and all that. So yes, there are issues, but they are being tackled. But the bottom line is that you can't just focus on tackling the waste without looking for new streams, because it's still within the old frame when you tackle the waste. You still need to get a new frame which will drive you forward. So I agree with you. We need to deal with the waste. We need to deal with expenditure. And in dealing with expenditure, the government has already earmarked a 20% cut in its expenses for the year, as budgeted and approved by Parliament in the Appropriations Act already. The IMF tells you to do three things, which we are already doing. They'll tell you to look for new revenue. And hopefully, E-levy is that stream. They tell you to cut costs. And we have already moved to implement a 20% cut.
Right.
And then they tell you to manage your debt. If you cut costs, new streams of income, what you do is that you can pay down your debt in a structured manner.
Okay. For the sake of time, I'll just want us to wrap up this conversation on two critical issues. Since you speak for the New Patriotic Party, I'll take you way back to 2016. You made a promise to the people of Ghana that you are going to move away from taxation and move to production. And then subsequent to that, we had the Vice President, one of the leading members of the economic management team, indicate that taxing mobile money operations was not the way to go. What has been made of these promises?
Let me answer from the second point. He said you didn't want to tax poor people. That's what he said. A certain bracket of people who use that service needing to be taxed. And as we speak, 40% of the market is exempted because they are estimated to do transfers in a region of 100 cities a transaction. So 40% is nearly half of 100%. That's substantial. That is a major exemption for a large part of the population who will be involved in transacting on the internet. The second thing is that production doesn't mean that you stop taxation entirely. All that it means is that if you produce more, you generate more jobs, you generate more incomes, and you can tax more people for less. You don't have to just keep taxing consumption and taxing and borrowing money. But rather, if you enable production, you enable investment in production, you create jobs. When you create jobs, you create incomes. When you create incomes and all the other associated opportunities to do with production, you expand the tax net because more people earn incomes and they pay tax. When you expand the tax net, they're in a position to lower the threshold of taxes for everybody. So that is the rationale behind moving from taxation to production. You broaden the net, you create jobs, and you lower the threshold for everybody because more people are paying into the same pot.
Yao Boabeng speaks for the New Patriotic Party. He is the Director of Communications. Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia himself has spoken strongly about the Ghanaian economy, outlining some key policy interventions the administration has rolled out to build a resilient economy that will stand the test of time. The country's economy has been the center of discussion. Just gone by, we're speaking to Boabeng both on the local and international front, following a downgrade of Ghana to CAA1 rating by credit rating agency Moody's. But addressing participants at this year's Ghana Youth Congress, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia encouraged the Ghanaian people to be hopeful of overcoming the country's current economic situation to a one with better outlook as government continues to take targeted steps geared towards building a sustainable economy.
Because everything depends on addresses. And so we decided that for 60 years plus of independence, we never had national ID cards. And so we are going to put national ID cards. And we have put national ID card system in place for the first time in over 60 years since our independence. And we have issued almost 16 million national ID cards. This is a major achievement. We have not even started to scratch the surface of how that is going to help us in this country. We, through the Ghana Post GPS address system, every property in Ghana now has a unique digital address. We are in the process of putting the address plates on all the houses, including every village. We have identified 7.5 million properties, and we are in the process of doing so. And the good thing And the good thing about Ghana's digital address system, we've talked to Google, and Google has agreed to integrate Ghana's digital address system into Google Maps. So you will be able to use Google Maps to get your addresses. But when people come from other advanced countries today in Ghana, they are amazed, because if you take the Ghana GPS app, Ghana Post GPS app, it can take you anywhere in Ghana. You just put in the digital address. It's like a sat nav. It can take you anywhere. And that is a key for us. I mean, if you want to help this country grow, you cannot do without an address system. And so we are in an era of e-commerce. You know, how will the police find your house if you want them to come, and all of that. So we have solved the problem. We've solved the problem of national identity. These are problems that existed for over 60 years. Every government talked about them, but we never solved the problem. We said, let us do.
Now, the chiefs and people of Bremen Jamra are hailing the multimedia group for blazing the trail in impactful journalism. This comes as the group mobilizes public support to help them build a safer school block for the community. Jansehini Nanakwisi Enim III, while urging multimedia to keep up the good work, also appealed for more support to complete the work on schedule. There's more in the following report.
The Multimedia Group's classroom project is tailored towards promoting philanthropy for development at the community level without looking up to the central government or donor support. The construction of a 3-unit classroom block at Bremen Jamra is one of the many development projects the community needs. The initiative has since won the hearts of the traditional leaders.
And let me take this opportunity to thank multimedia. It's not about the yesterday journalism that we all know. This one is journalism about the challenges people are facing in their communities, and it's a plus for multimedia. My prayer is that when this project is done, you will not just move to, is it Tolon? You told us that you are doing one in Tolon, you do that one and go to other communities as well.
Unlike before, work on site has slowed down a bit in the last couple of days due to dwindling community participation. The traditional authorities are not too happy and have been calling for additional support.
Today's communal labor is not like yesterday. Hitherto, the community was a very small area, mechanical solidarity community. So immediately there's a gong bita. Everybody comes on board to do the work. They will come to the work from 6 a.m., 11 a.m. Then they go. The diminution return sets in. And so from 11 upwards, what happens? We engage some technical people, then the community pays them. So this is our challenge. We need, we will continue to ask humbly so as to get the needed support to complete the project on time.
There has been a long time perception of people, particularly Ghanaians, that government should provide everything. So in the meantime, what we've been doing, we've been engaging them, we've been talking to them to sort of work on their psyche that these times have changed and the government cannot do everything. So that is the solution that we are using to solve this challenge. But so whilst we are speaking to them, we're talking to them, if like Nana said, if the people who are helping us, if they can donate some more, just something small to motivate them. We are looking at the time that the project should end. Okay, that's where the issue is.
Despite the challenge, some of the community members have been expressing their commitment to seeing the project through completion.
It's all about leadership. So I see it as very as possible. We'll be able to finish the project within the 10 days. We'll have to meet our people again and talk to them.
My friends, Edmunded a man, yes, so say, yeah.
Sanya Moboa no say so yeboa me as a school no fofuru be si word ma bon say abofre bi wo ba bia obaksa school dan ya efe ntima minkom na minkosua ade ni na adam ebe menkrasha ma oman.
The classroom project is brought to you kind courtesy the Star Ghana Foundation with funding from the Dutch Foreign Affairs Ministry. It is supported by the Israeli Embassy, Forestry Commission, the Planned City Extension Project, DBS Roofing Sheets, and you, our cherished audiences. The classroom project, promoting social justice through philanthropy.
Well, and thanks for staying with us here on The Pulse. Let's bring you an update on the UTAC strike. You recall that the court issued a directive for the parties to resolve the issues out of court and return on Thursday. Since then, discussions have been going on behind the scenes and in a way to try and find some common ground on the matter. They met yesterday but did not achieve conclusion to the issues and will return to the negotiation table tomorrow. As that goes on, the Africa Education Watch is asking the school's management to shut down the facilities. So why are they making such a demand? Joining us now is Kofi Asari. He's the Executive Director for the Africa Center, Africa Education Watch. Thanks so much, sir, for joining us. So what are your reasons for which you're calling for a shutdown across the nation?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to your cherished audience. We are making our call for the closure of universities because 5 weeks ago, freshers were admitted in school. Since they arrived in school, not even have they been matriculated into the university environment. They have not gone through matriculation. They have not started lectures. They have done nothing of academic value. Yet they've been staying in school for 5 weeks, doing practically nothing. Unlike continuing students, freshmen have no experience in tertiary level education. They have no exposure to tertiary level academics. So they are relying on the commencement of academic work to be able to, obtain the necessary academic guidance. Now, given this environment, on what basis do you keep such students in school for 5 weeks, doing practically nothing? For continuing students, one might say that, of course, they are already in school, so they may have assignments or projects or, some guidance. But for freshers, no. And if you look at on our campuses, majority of the students, they are freshers because they've been asked to report to school since January and have been there for 5 weeks doing nothing. That's why we are saying that in the absence of a clear, end in sight to this impasse, especially where the two groups, government and lecturers, have been virtually engaged in litigation in the first 4 weeks, the best thing to do is to let the students go home, and then whenever UTAC decides to return to teach, they should be recalled.
What would be your response to the assertion that the calls you're making now lacks any legal grounding, particularly all that we've seen so far is convention. The convention has been 20, 21 days at most. Given the fact that your calls lack legal grounding, don't you feel that government needs some more time to try and work out a feasible solution in this matter?
When you have students spending money every day by living on their own when their families are home, when you have students remaining on campus, having unsupervised, no academic supervision on campus for 5 weeks, spending money on a daily basis at that economic and social cost. Do you still need a law to tell you that the students are idle, doing nothing, and so they have to come home? I don't think we need a law. In any case, the University of Cape Coast, for instance, has a statute that actually recommends that 21 days of academic instruction should warrant the closure of the school, 5.2 clause L of the university's 2016 statutes. But I don't want us to be talking about laws, because laws are made for man. The exigencies of the time should inform us that it is unconscionable to keep freshers on campus for 5 weeks doing practically nothing. They are only wasting money. Their continuous stay there is a burden on their families back home. They are better off at home, not spending the money they are spending outside home. And also, they are better off at home under the supervision of their parents, because the lecturers supposed to be giving them academic guidance and counseling are not even on campus to do that service. It's as simple as that. What do we lose by asking the freshers to come home until the UTAG is ready to teach? That should be the other side of the coin. What do we lose by being, pragmatic and asking ourselves that why are we keeping the students hosted in school when obviously the university community has nothing of academic value to offer to them so far as the UTAG is on strike?
How about the alternative? The alternative here is that it's scarier to leave these school children to be out there at home. They have at least an opportunity to study when they are on campus. You are an educationist. What would you say to that?
Which opportunity to study are you talking about? The students have not been matriculated. They have not even gone through matriculation. I'm not sure some of them have even seen their course outline. They have not been matriculated. So, which I don't know which opportunity you're talking about. And opportunity to study what? They don't have any academic guidance. They have not been involved or been introduced to any academic activity for which they can build upon a studying culture. So I honestly do not understand. It has no foundation because nothing has happened. They went to school, registered, and then even before matriculation, the strike happened. So they are actually stranded. Technically, they are stranded. There is nothing for the students to build upon because they are new in that environment. And the people supposed to give them the academic guidance and counseling are on strike. There's no formal lectures taking place.
Right.
So that assumption does not hold water. To be honest with you, some of them are already home. The freshers, some of them are already home. We have spoken to students on various campuses. Some of them are already home, and the campuses are being deserted by the day. So closing the campus would not make any difference because already many students are home.
I'm grateful. Kofi Asari is the Executive Director for the Africa Education Watch. Let's now take you to Germany for our international conversations with our partners, the DW. The growing tensions between Ukraine and Russia continues to dominate international discussions. German Chancellor Scholz was in Washington yesterday. Today, he's meeting his French and Polish counterparts in Berlin. His foreign ministers in Ukraine, and Scholz himself will be traveling there and to Moscow in a few days' time. Thomas Sparrow is joining us now for this week's international talk. Germany, as we know, Thomas, has been criticized as being an unreliable partner and not being decisive enough. Why is this the case?
Germany has been criticized for not sending defensive weapons to Ukraine as other countries have done. The government still defends this position, and officials have indicated that support to Ukraine should not only be seen through the lens of these deliveries and should also include the fact that Germany supports Kiev, for example, economically. An even thornier issue for Germany is, however, the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which joins Russia and Germany and is waiting for regulatory approval. Germany's allies think this leaves Europe too vulnerable to Russia's interests. The German government has been criticized for not stating clearly enough that the pipeline would be cancelled if Russia invades Ukraine.
And we know that there are a number of high-level meetings this week in Europe to reduce the tensions. What's the expected outcome of these engagements?
Germany and its allies have a two-way strategy. On the one hand, stress that Russia would pay a high price if it invades Ukraine. Different possible sanctions are being discussed, including stopping the pipeline. On the other hand, trying to foster channels of discussion. Specifically in the German and the French case, the so-called Normandy format is important. It brings together Russia and Ukraine as well as Germany and France in a mediator role. The goal of this and other formats is to stabilize the situation on the short term and then find ways of de-escalating the crisis.
Itself, is Germany going to change its stance on Ukraine and send defensive weapons as other allies have done?
It's unlikely at the moment that Germany would change its stance here. Germany doesn't believe sending weapons to Ukraine will help political negotiations, and has a policy, which it has broken in certain occasions, of not sending weapons to crisis zones. In addition, most Germans back the government when it comes to not sending lethal aid to Ukraine. More likely, what we will see in this regard is more German commitment to mutual defence through NATO. One concrete example has already been announced. Germany will be sending additional troops to Lithuania. But it will be important to see whether moves like this will reduce pressure from those who believe Germany should take an even bigger role when it comes to solving this crisis.
Thomas Sparrow, I'm grateful for the updates. Now, a new study conducted by CDD Ghana has found that the passage of the controversial Proper Sexual Rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill could spell grimmer outlook for Ghana. The report says Ghana could lose up to 6% in annual budget funding. On PMS Express tonight, we are interrogating the economic cost and the Western donor dilemma. Make a date, 9 p.m. on the JoyNews channel. But next, we do have sports coming your way. Stay with us here on The Pulse. And it's a wrap for today's edition of The Pulse with me, Blessed Sugan. Don't forget that we have updates on all of our running stories at myjoyonline.com. Up next is Let's Talk Showbiz.